So, hello again, I'm Dimitris. So, by some magic, we are almost on time for the last session of the day. And so, this is about IOF. IOF is a key partner of OntoCommons. So, you know that we have two members of the governance board of IOF. So, what is this? Professor Barry Smith and CERN from NIST in the advisory board of OntoCommons, and they are with us here today, together with our chair of the IOF, so Jim Wilson, and myself. I am also co-chair of the technical oversight board of IOF, and we will present you what is the, let's say, the state of play, so where we are with IOF today, and what are the perspectives and the next steps, both in terms of technologies and in terms of governance and plans to go ahead. So first, I would like to invite CERN to start presenting us the.
Welcome.
Yeah, please. Yes, you are the third one after me. So, CERN, please, who will present us all the a little bit the history of IOF and where we are today in terms of offer and technologies, etc. Please, CERN.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dimitri. I have quite a number of slides. I think you have heard some stuff from Barry and from Jim already yesterday. So I'll try to skip some. So I'm gonna go through this slide to kind of give you a little bit of background of IOF. I think most of the people already know about the IOF. So the other part is to give the update about the IOF activities and products. So that's my objective here. So the IOF, as Barry said yesterday, was formed because there are a bunch of industrial ontology, basically ontology in the engineering domain, but they were fragmented and they are not coherent. Some of them are overlapped, and most of them are, of course, developed off of the short life research funded project. So with the success of the Global Foundry and connection between Hedy and Barry and Dimitri, we formed the IOF with the mission to create reference ontologies for the entire manufacturing domain. In addition to that, of course, we would like to provide the specification and guidelines to so that the community can develop these ontologies in a consistent manner. And recently, we also start providing the infrastructure to collaboratively develop these and publish this, basically make the release of the ontology. So the goal is really to make a suite of ontologies so that they are all coherent, and keep it like that for the foreseeable future. So a little bit of the history recap. IOF was formed in the December 2016. We had the first workshop at NIST, about 30 people. And then from there, we start, having a weekly conference call, a lot of talking. So about, I guess, a year later, we started the IOF proof of concept to try to focus on some small set of terms and formalize them into the ontology. And we successfully kind of picked the top 20 terms initially to focus on. And then it took us kind of another year to kind of debate on how we formalize that. And finally, in February in Oslo here, actually, with a lot of snow, nothing else to do. So we went through the process to kind of democratize process to pick the top level ontology to start formalizing those top terms, selected in the proof of concept. And VFO was selected. I didn't select that. It was the I was just the facilitator. So it's not like, I think Barry has been supportive of this journey, and I think we know that at some point we may not be able to adhere to the BFO, but we try very hard to adhere to the BFO, and it's so far it provided a good guideline, and with some adjustment to the presentation, we can make the industry understand this BFO-based ontology, and I will show you a little bit later. So then in March 2021, we start to have the IOF product. So some of the industry partners start asking us, okay, if we use this IOF ontology, are we, risking our intellectual property violation? So because of that, the IOF product was transferred to the OGI. So that's the reason IOF is formed legally under the OGI as an organization that owns the intellectual property. And OGI basically take the risk of taking ownership of this content, because this content was originally developed without any sort of IP agreement. So we went through the process of developing the intellectual property transfer from the previous members of the IOF who contribute to this content. So again, so we thank OGI, who is Jing, who is going to take this risk of somebody coming back to sue any IOF ontology user that they own some of the intellectual property in the ontology. And then it took us roughly almost another 2 years, and finally we released the IOF core version 1 in February 2023 of this year, actually. And along with that, the supply chain ontology and the maintenance ontologies were also released in the provisional status. So where we are now, organizationally and technically. So this one shows the IOF member and organization. Members mean like individual members. So we can see that our membership has been growing slowly but surely, I guess. As of this year, we have about 185 individuals signed up in the mailing list, and of those, they are from 56 organizations. So actually, in the 2021, we had to re-sign up all the IOF participants. When we transitioned from the kind of loosely connected community to be part of the OGI. So the membership was reset. I was a little bit concerned whether people were going to come back, but most of them came back and retained their interest in the IOF. Okay, I forgot about that. So IOF is organized in such a way that there are overlaps across the group. So there are basically 4 types of entities. There's a governance board, technical oversight board, and the working groups, and also the task groups. So we ensure that all these entities has overlapping personnel, so that the information flow in both way and everybody is keep abreast. Basically, Jing, I guess Dimitri will give you some more detail about the technical oversight board. The role is really just as the name is responsible for the technical aspect of the IOF content. The governance board is responsible for administrative stuff like the bylaws and how people should behave. Soon we will have the membership with the pay membership, hopefully to support the IOF continuity, and Jim will talk more about that. The working group is about developing ontologies. The task group, on the other hand, is kind of some focusing on the technical specification that is cutting across. So things like the IRI pattern, and annotation guideline, and they are also responsible for providing the infrastructure to support the development and publication of the ontologies. In terms of working group, there are about, I guess, 9 working group, of which 6 or 7 are pretty active. That I showed you yesterday. And in terms of the task groups, there are the IOF architecture and IOF policy and procedure. The IOF architecture meets pretty much every week, unless the share is not available. So I would classify the IOF products into these 3 categories. So basically, best practices, infrastructure, and reference ontologies. So example of best practices are or specification, and I would also qualify that. It can be like technical principle documents, IRI specification, and now we are also working on ontology development and governance workflow. Basically, how the ontology should be developed, how to get it approved, how to get it into the GitHub, and how to get it into the final release. The infrastructure basically consists of the GitHub repo, also things like the wiki page and the Jira issue management. There is also a validation engine. I think we call it like hygiene test to make sure that the ontology is compliant with the, for example, the annotation guideline. And then there's a publication automation to put that on the permanent URL and also the viewer. So in terms of reference ontology, I guess I already mentioned that. I will skip that. This is the IOF architecture as of now. Okay, so there's the top-level ontology, which is a BFO, domain independent mid-level ontology. This could be something like time and quantity and unit. The domain-specific reference ontology, these are supply chain, maintenance, production planning, scheduling ontology, and so forth. I think the IOF core is also sit here. Now, we don't envision that the IOF will produce our like a final ontology used by the industry. So that's why there is this part that that are ontology that may not be produced by the IOF, but maybe with by some ISO or industry standard group. Along with the IOF core, we also developed the IOF annotation vocabulary, which is pretty comprehensive. for example, we provide not just like example. We want people to also provide counter example. Basically, what are the example of things that are not falling into this class? And the IOF ontology provide not only our axioms, we also provide things like first order logic axiom in the annotation form, and there's like a format specified in the annotation guideline. Finally, for the definition, also there are several kinds of definition that we ask the working group to provide. Not only the natural language definition, but also logic definition, subject matter expert explanation, and each of these has also the logical axioms counterpart. In terms of the we also again working on this ontology development and governance workflow, and this is still ongoing. So this workflow supposed to provide guideline on how to do like a usage scenario management, how to do issue management, how to release and publish ontology, and how to vote on this ontology. Okay, so we also working on infrastructure to manage all this, as I mentioned earlier. So the first version of the IOF core already use this infrastructure, but they're just fixed here and there. So not only it has all this typical software management component, there's also this serializer to make sure that if you edit ontology with some tools that put the ontology content into like a different order, because order doesn't matter, and this serializer kind of put things back into order so that you can compare the ontology easily on a simple diff tool. The hygiene test is the one that validate the ontology according to the annotation guide. And then the CI/CD again, just to take the content in the GitHub and then publish it. And there's also the IOF viewer, which is reused from the financial industry, providing ability for the non-ontologies, to be able to browse the ontology. And I understand that this may be something similar to the tool in the industry portal, but this one is kind of linked directly to the GitHub, so it has access to all the version, all the branches of the ontology being developed, not just the published version. So it's a little bit different from that aspect. I'm pretty sure we would like to have as part of the automation, CI/CD automation, to put perhaps the latest version into the OntoCommons repository. Or I don't know, maybe you want to put all the versions up there, but this one has even the one that is in flight being developed. This is a slide from Fahad. I guess it just showed the IOF architecture again, so I'll just skip that. Okay, so I showed this slide at the recent industry conference last week, and it seems like even the industry people who saw the ontology for the first time, they kind of get this. So I just want to show that I explained this. BFO has things that exist through time and things that are unfolded in time, and then has classified this thing into information, material, and space, and function and role. Material bear function or role, and then material is located in space. Information is about all this stuff. And it shows some boxes, in the process branch, which is like a time and time period and process, and then they can be occurring part of each other. And then this thing can participate in the process, and the process occur in the space. So I'll skip this slide. This is, some detail about the IOF core. So from the BFO, then, we have the IOF core ontology. So I just, highlight some part that the IOF core derived from the BFO. There's information, material, and role. In information, we create something like a plan specification and action specification, which is part of the plan spec. And there's a design spec, requirement spec, or prescribed the design spec, and then there's a material artifact. This design spec, prescribed material artifact. Equipment is a kind of material. Material is a member part of engineer system, and then the manufacturing role, product role, and raw material role. And then there's a material product that bear this role. And in terms of the process, we create things like plan process, and this plan spec prescribe this. The plan process has, a few kinds of processes, measurement, manufacturing process, and they can be part of each other and then can be output. So that's the IOF core. To summarize, the IOF core, there are 72 classes. And most of the classes are axiomatized. So I counted, is 92% axiomatized. So it means that most of the classes has the axioms that are more than just, subclass. It's not just a taxonomy. Okay, so I just want to highlight that also the IOF core has been piloted in the biopharmaceutical industry. And then I actually showed this slide at the conference previous week, which is a biopharma conference. So it showed that, okay, from the IOF core, they derive something like a plan specification. Derived from the plan specification, things like control strategy, which has part general recipe, equipment, independent process, and the general recipe can be derived into more specific kind of recipe. Recipe is like a process plan, but it's for the process industry. Then it can be more specific. Site recipe, again, can be derived into the more specific one called master recipe. Now, the master recipe has specific equipment specified, what it has to occur on. And then, it kind of getting more specific and more specific. So one of the things they do in this biopharma for the first set of use case is the monitoring, process monitoring, basically. So there's a need for monitoring process specification, which is specified by this unit procedure, and then it has objective, which has information about parameter specification. And then this parameter specification, important concept there are like critical process parameter and critical quality attributes. And then, there's something like requirement, prescribed raw material. And then in plan process, they have something like a batch one, monitoring process, sampling process. The batch one is prescribed by this unit procedure. The batch one can have sub batch. A batch one can have input, which is raw material. As a current part, monitoring process. So the monitoring process basically monitor the batch one. And to do the monitoring, you need to do a sampling. And then the sampling, of course, need a measurement process. So I'll just skip most of this. Okay. So in that pilot, they have demonstrated the use case in the end-to-end manufacturing process in biopharma for things like a sample provenance. So they were able to capture information about samples taken during the production and use that information again to do the trend analysis, process monitoring. And then From there, they can do comparative analysis to basically compare the batch information, from a different factory or different scale. Okay, so that's about the usage of the IOF core. For the supply chain ontology, just give you a summary. Again, just want to highlight that it's highly axiomatized also. About 70% of the classes have the axioms. The maintenance ontology is small. It has 21 classes, but surprisingly, they can use this small extension to satisfy quite a good number of use cases, 3 use cases. So I'll let Jim talk more about this. So we're gonna transition to a pay membership, and there's a plan to also establish industry council structure to support this kind of industry-specific extension like the biopharma. There are a lot of things to do. So just to summarize, the IOF ontology is highly axiomatized. So core and supply chain now receive the full release status. And again, we have successfully piloted the IOF core in the biopharma industry. The industry people seem to be happy. They could understand what we are doing, and they are kind of excited to be able to use this. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. So for this overview and where we are now, so with these 3 ontologies, one IOF core and the other 2 in the domains of supply chain and the maintenance and the others that are coming. Now I will take a few minutes to present you what we do in the top technical oversight board, which is an essential part of, yes, this one. Thank you. So the technical oversight board is, as it was shown in one of the charts, so it may be the chairs of the working groups are there and some other people. So here. Yes, so the chair is Todd Schneider, who is not with us today, and I'm the co-chair. And so we are there to serve the goals of IOF. So that have been explained, so I will not stay a lot to that, is to create reference ontologies and guides and principles and best practices to develop these ontologies and disseminate them in the industry. So the role of the Technical Oversight Board, as I said, it is chaired by Todd Schneider and myself so far, and is to take care that we develop, so these principles are approved, are discussed and approved by the stakeholders, and the work is done in the working groups in good terms and in the task groups. And we work every 1 hour, every 2 weeks, and we oversee what happens in all these activities. Also the various principles that are developed, so we see if there are problems and we adapt the principles and the guidelines as well, etc. And one of the main objective is to maintain the ontology, the IOF architecture that the last version was shown by CERN. I will show also the last slide. Also interoperability, consistency of ontologies. So we check that in all the working groups, the ontologies are developed following the principles so that they are consistent and coherent among themselves, at least within IOF. Of course, if somebody wants, as Barry said, and invited some of you, if you want to create a working group, or somebody or a group wants to create a new working group, it is approved by the top. And also, we know in the top who are the managers of the moderators of the working group, and they are members of the Technical Oversight Board as well. If there are conflicts, they are discussed, or issues that are discussed in this top, and then so we are in permanent contact with governance board, and our works are aligned. So these are the working groups and task groups, so I will not stay there. And these are the ontologies, the core ontologies that are have been developed and explained and presented by CERM, and here you have places in GitHub where you can find them. And now we are in the what we do now. So we, as I said, so we work together. We're aware what happens in OntoCommons and vice versa. We know that there are ontology principles that are developed in OntoCommons and also the OntoCommons ecosystem, and the principles that Sam showed the shadow graph about the workflow, and this is aligned well with the experience of the OntoCommons. The third point here is very important. So we want to import or reuse ontologies that have been developed outside the IOF, how to integrate them or use them in IOF ontologies. And also standards. We discussed a lot about standards. So what are the links or the procedures that IOF has to develop with standards organizations that are interested in work with IOF? So this is also under development. And so this is, so this is not the last version, but anyway, so this is the last version is what Sam showed. So no, it's okay. So that's enough. So that's the examples of what we have as domain-specific reference ontologies or domain independent reference ontologies. And IOF core is the core ontology of IOF that creates the links between these two things. And the IOF ontologies is these two upper parts of you see this under IOF ontology. So we don't, let's say, touch subdomain ontologies that are specific to, for example, stainless steel or PFC. We're taking care of steel, if you see above, and the application ontologies, of course. And I think I will stop here. So one of the about IOF core, so as you know, so the one important decision that was taken here at PFL in this building in the top after a strong debate and voting, it is BFO, and then we have the chance to have Barry Smith here. And I would like to invite Barry Smith so to come here one more time. So it is your first speech here, fourth talk here, fourth, yes. So I asked him to tell us a little bit about.
I'm going to repeat the third talk.
Okay, but emphasize please on the feature of BFO, because BFO is not the end. It's also.
Well, actually, I'm going to go further than that.
Farther than that. Very good. So please.
So I'll start while you do the slides.
I have them here. If
Okay.
you haven't changed any
But
version.
still. All right. So BFO is not very articulate when it comes to the treatment of abstract entities such as software. We're moving towards addressing that problem by developing an ontology of mathematics, which will go hand in hand with an ontology of physics, both of which will be extensions of BFO rather than parts of a new expanded BFO. And but there are other abstract objects which are important to any kind of organized activity, including industrial activity, which are abstract relations between, for instance, people. There are abstract relations also between people and things, for instance, the relation of ownership. And what I want to talk about now is what I believe will be an important contribution to the future IOF treatment of human resources or factories or teams or any kind of organizational unit which is contributing to, for instance, industrial manufacturing. So we need to understand the people in a factory and how they relate to each other. And that's what this talk is about. It's about how people relate to each other in organizations and thereby about organizations themselves. And I'll be using in this connection the BFO class called role. And roles are, as it says here, a matter of social assignment. So CERM, is he still here? Yeah, CERM is he is the smiler in chief. I created him the smiler in chief by a single act, and he continues to play his role by realizing this disposition that he has to smile a lot. Now, but what I'm going to be talking about now is the specific roles involved in authority relations, because if you have an organization like a factory, you need a manager. And so we need to understand how managers relate to their subordinates. And so we have a group of people, they form an organization, and there is a very clever legal philosopher in America called Scott Shapiro, who says that we need authority in order to deal with massively shared agency. So you can't have an army or a choir or an orchestra or any kind of big organization unless you have authority. And so he says that authorities are mesh creating mechanisms, and a factory works only if there is a mesh creating mechanism to ensure that the people do the right things in the right order. And those things that they do include obeying other people who are inferior or superior to them. Now, is there a device so I can move the slides? Yeah, I just do this. Okay, it's no problem. So, organizations involve persons with different roles. Some people have authority over others. There may be other roles which make an organization work: advisory roles, auditing roles, oversight roles, legal roles. But I'm going to focus on subordination and authority. So she is a member of the organization, and she has authority over him. That's the relation I'm going to be focusing on. And I'm going to start with a provisional hypothesis. I will modify this hypothesis a little bit later on, but I will say that in every organization, every member has at most one superordinate. So you can't have two bosses. Now that is a simplification, but we will see how it works out as we move along. The superordinate issues commands, and so the ontology of organizations will require a treatment of classes like command, and that will be useful for other areas in which command and control plays a role. So sometimes multiple people have authority over a single person. For instance, the day manager has authority over him during the day, and the night manager has authority over him during the night. And then the transport committee, which has to work day and night and consists of two people, is the one authority over him. So the hypothesis is still satisfied even if we have shared authority, because the shared authority will be capable of being addressed in terms of things like committees. So an organization is, by definition, on the basis of what I've said so far, an aggregate of persons who are joined together by relations of authority and by the counterpart relations of subordination, has duty towards. But that is made more complicated because you can have an organization which has organizations as parts. So you could have multiple levels of organization. All right, so how do we understand duties? So the answer is employment contracts. So the way in which organizations in commercial realms, such as manufacturing industry, are managed is in terms of employment contracts. So what gives Mary authority over Sally is Mary's employment contract together with Sally's employment contract. Mary's employment contract says one of her jobs is to manage Sally, and Sally's employment contract says that one of her duties is to follow the instructions of Mary. Now it may be that the employment contract doesn't mention Mary, it will mention her office or role as the chief of the division in which Sally works. All right, now you can already see here that we have a very simple organigram. And I want to argue that a key tool for understanding the ontology of organizations is organigrams. So this is the US Department of State, which is an organigram by role type. So there are no people mentioned here, only roles. Now, of course, on any given day, each of these roles will be assigned to a certain person, unless they're not, because that person who occupies that role just died or just resigned, and they haven't replaced her yet. But in general, an organigram represents both roles and the persons who hold those roles. But in the full account of how organigrams work, we're going to have to allow for empty role or empty offices, which are caused by death or holiday or resignation and so on. And that's an interesting area. So the ontology of empty offices is an interesting area. Oh, sorry, I'm at the wrong empty. Okay, now this is a very interesting organigram, which is an organigram by both role and occupant. And it's interesting only because I think this is where Hedy works. And I'm not even sure that Hedy is in the room, but anyway. Now this is another very interesting organigram, which doesn't have anything to do with Antiguo, but I think it's one of the oldest organigrams that we have a copy of, and it's a copy which has got messed up. This is big data in the 19th century, and it's an organigram of the New York Erie Railroad. So it's both a geographical organigram and a structural organigram, because it divides the organization into places as well as into. So this is New Jersey, New York here. Those are the stations. So this is a lot of little stations in the sticks. This is Buffalo, and this is the board of directors. And these are the wipers and firemen and so forth in Buffalo. And anyway, you get the idea. It's a very beautiful. It's a pity they don't have a clean copy. So what are the basic ontological components of an organigram? Well, there is the name of the organization, the date of the organigram. This is going to be part of the canonical data that we collect about organizations. It will include all of these data. It will include the edges in the graph and the nodes of the graph, and the nodes will have parts which include the names of the office, the names of the division within the organization, for instance, Buffalo Railway Station, and the name of the office holder, at least those things, and then all the relations between them. And this is the basic building block, and this is how it looks when you take the names into account. And so this is how it looks when you see how the data on the left relates to the entities in the world. But now there's more than just that, the Mary and Sally. There is also the relation between Mary and Sally, which is over there in the world, and which is represented by the edge in the organigram on the left. So that means is about. Now, it gets complicated because the same person can have two or more positions in an organization. And so Mary has role number 1, Sally has role number 2, and there is a simple 1-1 relation between them. But if we have what is called matrix organization, then one and the same person may have two bosses. They have one boss because they're a member of Project B, and they have another boss because they are subservient. The whole team or the whole organization is subservient to one general manager. Now, this seems to conflict with my thesis number one, namely that every member of an organization has at most one superordinate. It seems that here we have a case of two superordinates, or more than two, but this is not so. So this is the first view of that particular structure. But this is a second view, and it's the same structure, but it's if we see the structure in this way rather than in the matrix way, we get exactly the same relations with exactly the same superordinates, but everybody has at most one superordinate, one immediate superordinate, in other words, rather than an inherited superordinate. All right, now, as I say, there will be other edges within the organogram, including the authority edge. For instance, advisor to this president, or chair of the audit committee, or appointments committee member, so that there are more roles that we need to take account of, but you get the idea. And now another area that we need to think about in the IOF, but in other ontologies dealing with business organizations, are the normative relations which hold. So what does it mean to say that A has authority over B? Well, it means something like this. If B doesn't do what A says, then she will be punished. That's a very rough and ready account of authority, but we need a coherent account in order to make this work. And it's hard to do that within BFO. Now, that's good because it means that BFO is being put to the test. It's easy to do that in a sloppy ontology. You just add the word authority and you say it's a privative, but BFO has to say which class it belongs to in BFO. And I think that's probably enough. Yeah, okay, I'm finished.
Thank you. Thank you for this insight, Barry. And maybe you know that after Industry 4.0, it is Industry 5.0 who is coming. And Industry 5.0 has human in the center. So this ontology will be an enabler to implement solutions for Industry 5.0. And then now we have the chairman of IOF and OAGI, who will talk us what is coming next.
Sure.
Thank you, John.
Perfect. All right, thank you, Demetrius. All right, I'm it. I stand between you and beer or wine, I suppose. So I think I can make this quick. This is not, I don't like presentations that are just full of bullet points. I like lots of pictures and diagrams, but this material just doesn't lend itself to that. So you're getting bullet points, but I'll go quickly. All right, so we'll get right to the point here. The current state, I'm going to tell you about the current state, our desired future state, and what we're doing to get there. So the current state of IOF is we actually have pretty good name recognition. I find myself regularly surprised by how IOF is mentioned here and there. We have expert participation. You just heard from three of them so far: Serm, Barry, and Demetrius. Lots of other experts from around the world participate in IOF, and that's exciting. As Serm and I think everybody mentioned, we've released the core ontology, and it took a long time and a lot of spirited discussion to complete, but we're happy with the outcome, and it's published for the world to use. We have a couple of domain ontologies that I think are released in provisional status, is what Serm said, with maintenance and supply chain. Supply chain is released. And then we have a pretty robust ontology development, maintenance, and release process. We did have some funding to actually help develop that, and we have some experts that have put in a lot of time to make a very nice process there. And we have a lot of really good non-financial resources. So along with OAGI, we have Confluence and Jira with as many people as we want as users, no restrictions there. We have Smartsheet we use for collecting data through forms. GitHub, of course, everybody can have GitHub. Mail lists, which we're about to implement. We haven't yet. So anyway, lots of good non-financial resources. But there's some things that need improvement. A huge one is administrative support. All right, there is no paid staff. So OAGI kind of inherited this, and we inherited it at a time just before COVID, where we were planning on implementing from the beginning membership dues. And our biggest members said, wait, hold on. COVID presents a big risk to us. We're not about to invest in something new. So let's hold off until we see how this whole pandemic thing plays out. So, well, here we are. Everybody's back to traveling. Lots of people are back in the office. So we're ready to revisit this. Unfortunately, one negative side effect was that our administrative support has suffered in the meantime. So we need to support new member onboarding. We need to support new expert onboarding. And I'll just differ a little bit with CERM's definitions of things. Members are organizations. All right. So then we need a member for the people. You know, I've been doing this work a long time. Sometimes you call them volunteers. I actually kind of like the way ISO calls them. They just call them experts. All right. The people who are producing the work. Some aren't experts, but we'll just let them enjoy that title anyway. All right. Another one is executive leadership. You know, I was introduced as chairman. I don't do much executive stuff or leading, and really somebody needs to do some of it, whether it ends up being me or something. That needs improvement. We definitely need to improve marketing and communication. I mean, our name recognition is fantastic. I think the quality of our work, whether you agree with the outcome or not, I think most people would agree it's at least well done. That's all great, but other than a few press releases and people speaking at conferences, we don't have much in the way of marketing and communications. Some domains are not active. So I mentioned, 10 or 11 yesterday. A couple of them were just sort of spun up or an idea to start, but never really took off. And then funding. Okay, so our desired future state. I can run through these quickly. We want OAGI, IOF to be well funded by industry. Okay, that's key. We want the end users to fund the stuff they're going to use. We have at least a part-time executive director on staff. We have a full-time ontologist, or I'm thinking, I think the way we described it was ontology architect on staff. So somebody that is available full-time to help any working group do their work properly, and then oversee our whole maintenance and release processes. Also, OAGI IOF has a part-time administrative assistant on staff, and members and their experts are onboarded quickly and effectively, enabling their timely contribution to IOF work. So I can easily sympathize with working group leaders where somebody expresses an interest, the working group leader says, we'll go here and sign up. And then it's just, where am I? What happened? Did this person sign up? Like, are they on this list? Did they have access to this? Do they have access to GitHub? Or are they on the mailing list? We need to do a better job. We need to do an excellent job in the future of supporting working group leaders so that they can facilitate ontology development and not manage the processes of people getting signed up to access this and that. I mean, a good example is Genzi, one of Demetrius's former students. He changed email addresses. Okay, well, you change that, and that has kind of ripple effects across their access to various online resources. So a few more points of our desired future state are: we enjoy wide name recognition and we're known for producing high quality ontologies. We would like our work well represented in academia and research. We're well represented in select international conferences and workshops, and our ontologies are implemented in industry such that case studies are produced that explain the value. It's interesting, this whole week I hear little about value. You go to most other conferences and people name drop value like the word love is name dropped in pop music. I mean, it's just, you have to include it in every sentence to be taken seriously, it seems. But at the end of the day, there are people writing checks, and it's not, is this a good idea? It's, oh, I was going to spend money here. You told me this is a good idea. You need to tell me why your idea is a better way to spend the money than the way I was originally going to spend it. Okay, so case studies turn out to be really, really helpful in that respect. Of course, OAGI IOF collaborates with organizations. OAGI already has a long history of collaborating effectively with organizations. We recently signed a memorandum of understanding to collaborate with OntoCommons. And so Michaela and I caught up and we're eager to actually map out what that looks like in practice. A lot of people sign these agreements, so they put each other's logos on their website and validate to their leadership that they're doing good things. Well, Michaela and I want to actually do something useful. Okay, so 2 slides on path forward, and then you can close your laptops and get your beer. Yeah, so the first is implement paid membership. Our board has already defined what that looks like. There was kind of a holdup in terms of OAGI rolling out a new website with support for payment plans, but we have that set up, so we'll be looking to do that very soon. We want to document and implement a member onboarding process, and similarly an expert onboarding process to address those issues and achieve those ends I discussed earlier. We want to document more about working group, how to establish working groups, because you heard some kind of looking forward statements from our 3 previous speakers about, hey, we may want a working group for this or that. Well, people want to get work done. They don't really enjoy writing charters and, just talking about the administrative aspects. They're excited about what they want to accomplish. So we need a streamlined process to spin up working groups, help them get their work done and published, and then take them back down if they don't have any continuing work, or keep them operational. And along those lines, we need to document more about working group operational process, including internal communications. All right, and let's be clear, a lot of this is just, organizational management 101. This is not rocket science here. All right, getting a little more strategic, we need to develop, in my opinion, an IOF 5-year strategic plan. So OAGI has a 5-year strategic plan overall, and there's kind of a big chunk in it that just says IOF strategic plan. So we need to fill that in. We need to develop a 1-year IOF business plan. What do we want to accomplish in a year? At the end of the year, evaluate and see how we can do better the next year. We need to develop and execute a marketing and a communications plan. Technically, that's part of the business plan, but it's so important that I kind of call it out here. So how are we going to engage the press better? How are we going to engage the analyst community? Has Gartner, Forrester, whoever else is out there nowadays, do they know about this? Do they care? What's it take to engage them? We need to identify funding opportunities and submit proposals. I mentioned earlier that we want industry funding for this work, but hey, there's a lot of people getting a lot of funding to do dumb stuff by people who don't care to deliver anything useful to the taxpayers that funded it. And I figure there's people like you all in the room who want to do good stuff. So, hey, let's let's see what we can do. Let's see if out of all that funding, we can get some funding to do some IOF stuff. I mean, let's face it, the OntoCommons, OntoCommons investment, I think, has been fantastic. Another point here is we want to establish a legal presence in Europe. I've talked to Demetrius briefly about this a couple times, then kind of the pandemic hit and we haven't talked about it since, but it's the idea that if you want to qualify for any EU funding, you have to have a legal presence for the most part. Sometimes there's ways you can get sort of subcontracted or whatever, but it would make more sense to have a legal presence. And then finally, pursue meaningful collaborative relationships with other organizations. So, Industry Commons, as I mentioned, is one. I may have said OntoCommons, but Industry Commons is one. And there's many others we can pursue. And so with that, that's it. In the off chance you want a copy, there's a QR code for this presentation. And thank you. Turn it back over to Demetrius.
Thank you, Jim. So now you know where IOF stands today and what are the plans. So IOF is a different organization from OntoCommons. OntoCommons is a project. By end of October, it will be the end of the project, OntoCommons. So IOF is an organization who has a long life in front of it, I think. And maybe there's one way also to sustain some of the OntoCommons results by a kind of collaboration with a European entity or establishing something that will work together. So thank you for your presence today. And you want to close the session, maybe?
I didn't want to add. I was just
Okay,
closing the sharing screen. A round of applause for these amazing speakers now. And this closes our session for today and the whole day. We will meet again tomorrow at the same time, 9:30, with the start of the Innovation Day, where the results of the prototyping lab will be presented as well. Tomorrow, the event will end at 1. Thank you all and wishing you at home and in Oslo a lovely evening.